So we're going to pick up with the modifications required to use the expansion I/O board with my emulator here. I've got the version 1.4 board. I've downloaded the instructions on how to convert from the website, and I've really got them here, and we'll need to work through this. So I did a couple things different when I originally assembled the unit, and one of them was I went ahead and added pin headers in these two locations, and then used slide-on extension cables to hook the little RS-232 module up. And of course that is not going to get in the way of what I need to do to use the expansion card. So in the instructions, we removed the ring and tip cable and the power cable over here, and we removed those in the previous video and cleared out the solder holes. Move on here. He has us move on to soldering a pin header in this location here on the top of the board, and of course I soldered it on the bottom of the board, based on how I diverted from his original build instructions. So I need to remove that, and luckily I've got a good tool for doing that kind of work here. So let's see if I can actually get that pin header to come out. Well, if I've gotten lucky, those pins have all released. And of course I haven't gotten lucky here, it looks like. I don't know that any of them actually released. That one did, that one did, that one I don't think did. Oh, come on, little needle nose, hold on. So the ones I can push through the board, I'm going to go ahead and push through. I'm just going to pluck those out from this side if I can. And most of the connector's loose, so who? Still. Oh, I guess they all really did come loose. Hopefully I didn't just damage the PCB. I've got three here. Okay, those two are loose. Well, not quite. There, that one's come loose. I can pull him through this side of the board. So, yeah, I sacrificed the old connector, such is life. I believe in what he supplied. There were some extra pins in the pin header. There is right here. So here's a fresh set. Now where this gets interesting, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He shows dual toll pin, the expansion connector on the lower right side of the circuit board. So this is going to go in right here. We need to cut a trace on the PCB. I'm going to go ahead and cut that with the connector out. And looking at the PCB, the trace to be cut is this guy right here. I usually do this by making two cuts somewhat close together, then peeling up the copper in between them. It helps to guarantee that I have broken continuity. copper to peel up out of there, which it's doing, and it's gone. And he says to go in with a meter and just make sure that you no longer have continuity. You can do it from the two end vias down here. Oh, we put the meter in continuity so you can hear. So we have continuity. I'll get on these two vias. Yeah, we have successfully opened that trace up. So we've taken care of that piece. And really it's going to be, I guess, take 2 pins off this and solder him in. Doesn't look like it matters which end I cut from. They're both about the same. That shot across the room, which was entertaining. And he's going to solder in on the front side of the board here. Oh great, the tape picked up all kinds of cut wires and little bits of stuff. We'll just kind of hold him in so we can tack in a pin. Make sure he's flush. And finish soldering, and it looks like it's actually in flush, but I'll put some pressure on it just to make sure. Where's the cleaning tool? One more look. It's interesting he's doing this on the front side of the board, but that's okay. 1, 2, 3, yep. So there's actually a 14 conductor ribbon cable that goes on here, but only 12 of the pins actually connect to these pin headers. Try not to bend LEDs. And there's 2 pins that you need to hook up in a different manner. They don't slide on necessarily to the board. There's a couple of ways to do that he talks about. So that gets us that connector in place. Cut the trace. We've soldered in the connector. We need to add a wire from tip ring. Add a wire to connect the tip ring audio connector to the via located in the lower part of the trace you just cut. I don't believe that wire draws a lot of current. It passes a lot of current. I'm just going to use a piece of wire wrap here as a jumper if it's long enough. And no, that's not actually long enough. Shoot. The V over here is tiny, which is why I was thinking wrap wire. Now I'm going to actually grab a roll of wrap wire. Oh, heavy. One of these days I'll do a wire wrap project so you can see how it used to be done. There is my wire wrap wire. It's a good color for this. We'll just grab some yellow. Shoot. Dropping stuff. Excuse me. Sorry, I'm sorting around through a ton of stuff here. Hopefully my wire wrap strip tool is where it's supposed to be, and it is. We will strip back a fair run of that. And this should be small enough diameter to fit through the via, and it is. And we will tack that down there. So that picks up from there. And we'll kind of route this up around the tip ring. And it goes into the tip ring hole. Solder that lead wherever it just ended up. I'm probably off camera here, apologies. And trim him off. So that gets the jumper wire in place. And then it kind of moved on to the ribbon cable. So it's, oh, interesting. It's got a strain relief on one side. That I think I'm going to want to remove. Because if I go with the other side, the red stripe's to the wrong side. So I think I need to remove the strain relief. We'll see if I can get it to release. Or if I'm going to have to cut it out of there. I want to be kind of careful here and not break the connector itself. These can always be tricky to get out, although they will snap off just fine, and that gets the ribbon cable around the same orientation. He shows it in the photo, and he will go down on here. The problem is these outer two wires here aren't hooked to anything, and they need to be extended over to the VN and ground. So what happens is the DC input comes to this jack and now gets passed down the ribbon cable to power the board, whereas before the DC input jack was on the original back panel. So there's a couple of ways to do this, and I'm going to just modify the cable, kind of his first description here, and that is I want to carefully release two of the wires. So another way is to use 2-pin bend the end. See, I don't want to do this with the little 2-pin connector and bending. I don't want to create that because it'll make the connector not sit down on straight. He described, yeah, right here. So, two ways you can do this. You can cut the two rightmost wires carefully on the ribbon cable and connect those to the VN and ground. And that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to snip these two wires if I can. Snippers are really dull. Let's try a different pair that haven't been abused so much. That got them. And then I'm going to use the X-Acto to start to zip those off of there so I can peel them back. separate them. Strip them down. It's going to be stubborn. That gets those stripped down, and then we're going to add extension leads onto these. This will get ran over and soldered actually onto the front panel. I'm guessing this strip of wire he provided here in the kit was meant to do this. So let's prep one of the ends on this. Get those to zip apart. And do the same thing. And we'll need some shrink tubing for this. I'm going to have to get up and go grab shrink tubing. I should have some pretty small shrink tubing in here I can use for this. There's some small red and some small black. And I will go ahead and use red and black to kind of indicate polarity as well. You can cut the two rightmost wires and connect those to the inside wire is ground. Piece of shrink tubing. Get the red the same length. I don't know if I can get this slid down on there far enough to not shrink when the solder hits it. So let's see, it just said the inside wire is ground. I'm going to use brown for the ground, because I want red to be the hot. We're going to wrap these together. These big old fingers of mine. Well, still not lined up like I'd like it. And we will give that a bit of solder. And that would mean then that the outer wire is the positive. Well, if I can get them to line up the way I want them to. Twist. A little solder. Not happy with how that took the solder. I had too much old solder on there. Shrink tubing gets slid down into place. Inner wire is ground, outside wire is V. They're wired up that way. We'll make a bit of noise here, shrink that shrink tubing up. Apologies for the noise. Come back to the main PCB. And there's a photo someplace that kind of shows how this is put together. Right here. This ribbon cable is going to go on with red to the left. Make sure I'm in the right set of pins, and I am. And this cable is going to get routed across the board. Over to here. Actually nick that deeper than I wanted to. I did. A pair of actual decent wire strippers would make this easier than trying to use these flush cutters, but old habits die hard. I actually, on that first trying to remove the insulation on the red lead, I lost about half of the strands in the cable. Brown to ground, maybe. And of course the red one now. It's amazing to me that you look at these and you can see that they're spun up tight. You touch the board and the wires just flail apart. Just like keeps happening, I keep winding that up. When I get down near the board, those two go through there. There's a bit of tape floating around here to hold that down. We'll solder them up on this side. Looks like they're both pulled through well. Brown is to ground, red is to VN. Brown is on the inside, red is on the outside, so that should get that taken care of. So we've moved through that piece, We're really ready for hookup. Someplace in here was a photo of everything hooked together. I'm not going to use the Bluetooth module. There it is. So with this board this way, you got a much tighter, nicer fit across the board than I did with this lead. Well, it's not bad. You know, this ribbon cable just doesn't match. It's exiting on this side of the cable or on this side, you know, versus the picture. It doesn't matter. And this should be fine. It'll still fit in the case just fine, no big deal. So, it's a slight difference in the ribbon cable. Which side of the cable, or the connector the cable exits from, doesn't matter. Red will always be pin 1. So, well, red will be pin 1 if you get the cable in the correct orientation of the connector the first time around. But I think that really gets through this whole set of instructions. Really now it's move on to power up and test. So not bad. You know, we had to undo some of the stuff I did before. The micro SD card gets extended from where it was mounted there to over here. The power in is now here and passed through this cable. Really to the board, so the board has power. You know, I think we're golden. I'll just leave that connector on there. I don't need to remove it. I guess with that, I go find the power adapter and we power it up. So I think we've got all the pieces put together here, and it's time to actually apply power and see what happens. It's been a long time since I've mucked around with this thing, and I don't really remember how to use the switches and stuff. So I've got the manual here. There's a couple things that are LED based, as I don't have a terminal hooked up. Let's go ahead and put the SD card in. Yeah, it must go in that orientation. Yeah, it won't go in upside down. So it goes in upside down because of the way the connector's mounted. No big deal. So we've got the 9-volt adapter it came with here. We've got the power off. And we'll apply power here. That's a really good sign. Okay, that looks like everything came up correctly. So if we go to switch 1, actually let's look for kill the bit here, and it is, I believe, aux 1 down. Yeah, aux 1 down. Yep, there's kill the bit. So it's read the SD card, it's loaded the software, it's talking, the emulation's running because of the way the LEDs are acting. So really we're good here. At least for this smoke test, power's making it through. Power switch, of course, works. System comes up in whatever the random state is. We can go to the Pong game, which I've never actually played. There, I sent it back. Anyhow, things seem to be working at this point. We of course haven't tested PS2 or any other stuff, which doesn't tell us, we don't know at this point that the PIC processors actually come up and those things are working, but that's okay. Really hit a good spot here, so really nice to see it actually come up and run. So really the next pieces are going to be assembling the case, and I suspect that's going to be a long process. So I will, I guess, wrap this really short video up here. Happy with the results so far. Things look good. Emulation's running. Core system's there. Rock on.